Hello and welcome to another episode of Troubleshooting Life. Today I'm going to talk to you about profile development. Why do we lose our luster for things? So, as many of you have undoubtedly gotten into a romance, and when you first met this person, and it was awesome, you're on fire, couldn't wait to see the person again. Everything about what was going on in the relationship was all consuming. You were constantly thinking about them, waiting for the next phone call, text message, email, whatever it is, chat online or whatever. The next opportunity you got to see them. Why they first appeared to be so amazing and so enthralling. And then as time goes on, how we start to lose our attention or lose our direction and desire for that person. This actually is the same thing that we do with all things in life. Just like a child that goes to a store and sees a toy and plays with the toy only to become more directed towards that toy or wanting the toy more often, wanting the toy even more. So every time you go to the store, they run over and they grab that toy. They just can't wait to own it. Mommy, 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 daddy or whoever is going to buy this for me. You just couldn't wait. And then when it's finally there under the Christmas tree or for the birthday, or they finally get the toy and they play with it like mad for a very short period of time, and then it disappears to an extent, like it goes to the toy box, it gets put up on the shelf or whatever. Once it loses that value of discovery, it no longer holds a value of luster. Now it's just something else that you own. So in relationships, the book that I'm actually taking some of this out of is Moshe Feldenkrais' Body and Mature Behavior. This book is awesome, by the way. I know you'll hear me say that all the time, but I do find myself enjoying wonderful authors like Moshe Feldenkrais, Paul Chek, and many other wonderful authors. Timothy Ferriss, there's Sam Harris, there's a bunch of them. Anyhow, not to go into that rabbit hole. So in this book, he talks about why relationships are like, why is it we still have this desire for the sun? Why do we look up at it with such amazement? Why is it that we find so invigorating when you finally take a moment to appreciate it? The same concept of why people focus so heavily on this idea of heaven, the outer space. There's so many different things that still hold this majestic value for us that we can't satisfy. And the reason why we can't satisfy those versus why we can satisfy the idea of a relationship, which every person you meet is likely to be the one when they show interest in you, or they're probably going to meet whatever needs you have, and then they fall short. And the reason why they fall short is we get addicted to, and it's not the game necessarily, the game is something we develop now. It's more about the idea of developing a profile for that person. And how you develop a profile for the person is you go through the five senses, the five physical senses that we have. Intuition would be the sixth sense. Some people are in tune to that, some people aren't, so we won't focus on talking about that. So when you meet somebody, you get to see them. They still, because you haven't built much of a profile on them, you only see them, but you don't notice all the little nuances about them. You don't notice the little things. Like for guys, maybe they have hair in their ears or in their nose or whatever. For girls, it may be, maybe she doesn't look quite as good with her clothes off. That's all part of the development of the visual profile. Then you go into the physical touch, you go into the smell, you go into taste, you go into the physical experiences of these people. They're doing the same thing to you at the same time, by the way. We're building profiles for each other. Once the profile is built, that's whenever you actually get to validate whether or not that is somebody who meets the needs that you had underlying the intention for meeting a person in the first place. It's the honeymoon phase is what people call that. That's not really a honeymoon. All it is that you're building a profile. And the profile is something that's invigorating. It's something that's really joyful. You really enjoy doing it. So once you get the profile built, it may be a couple of months later, but now people have bought into fantasies about a relationship. So some women would become attached or men would become attached, and they separate because the profile has now created a sense of awareness that that person doesn't meet the underlying needs. And you may still be buying into the fantasy, but you're left feeling flat. even though you continue to purchase or pursue the fantasy, but you still feel flat on the backside. So you don't feel that you're really making the direction that you want, and the person's fantasy starts to disappear or dissipate. You see through the fog. And both people will be experiencing this, but it's all at different timelines. If the person doesn't meet the absolute underlying needs for that other person's individual idea for a relationship, once the profile is built, it's no longer a honeymoon. Now the fantasy can still keep things alive, but it's not the honeymoon's over. The profile is built. And now it's a matter of, do you get out of the relationship or what? Do you disappear? Do you find yourself kind of feeling restricted to the relationship, like you made promises when you were in the honeymoon phase before the profile was built because the other person was pushing heavily or whatever? There's a lot of directions to go with this, but I'm not going to go into those so far right now. I would rather actually address conversations that you guys would be interested in. But if you, again, want to know why people dissipate in their ideas of relationships, or why we get hot and heavy in the beginning and then drift away from it, is because we've satisfied the sensory systems of the body. So we know that person. Simple. Although we'll make it complex as hell, and we'll make it as challenging as possible. It's not easy, it's simple. So with that, guys, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I hope that it was a value for you. And again, like always, please feel free to message me below or directly or whatever. And again, thank you for your time. This is Chad Broshears with Go Figure Holistic Personal Training and Ascending to Total Maturity. This is another episode of Troubleshooting Life. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Oh, and go out there and get loved, will you?